How do you get back into the swing of things after being gone for so long?
Do you ever wish life had an undo button? Walking the balance between business and the creative life can be hard. But Matt and Shelby are here to attempt to answer the tough questions, so you don't need an undo. Presented by Made by Things. This is the CMD-Z Show.
Oh, we're on?
We're on.
Sorry, I missed the whole countdown and everything. Welcome back, everybody. It's our first episode that we are recording in 2024. And obviously, we're a little bit rusty. And when we say we, I mean me. Shelby, how you doing?
Doing all right. It's 2024. It's a whole new year. We made another trip around the sun. I'm really proud of Mother Earth and all of us. Good job.
You ever see those videos of yes, like, so we go around the sun, but like the sun going around the galaxy, and like the path that the planets actually make compared to what we have been taught that they look like, where it's these perfect circles. Think it's like
this little flat thing with all the little circles, but like seeing, especially even just like within our own solar system, like the way things like are interacting, it's so cool. Such a delicate balance.
It is crazy.
There's one wrong move and we're all crashing into each other.
Quick question. How long does it take for us to go around our galaxy?
That's a great question.
I'm typing this in right now.
I thought you were asking me, and it's like I am
asking you.
I took an astronomy 101 class. I did okay. We had a star party. I had a bunch of puns for kids. It was great.
All right, you got to answer the question now. How long does it take? Go.
I don't know.
You got to say a number.
I'm going to say 300 million years, which I know is wrong.
That is pretty damn close.
Really?
I'll give you that. I would have not said this. Again, I haven't done extensive research into this, but what Google is telling me at the very top of the page is about 230 million years.
Oh my God, I was so close.
You really were. I'm impressed.
I'm a scientist. I'm quitting my job, Matt. I'm going to go join NASA.
Yeah, I know this one thing. Huh. Anyway, so I encourage everybody to look that video up if you haven't yet, of what that trajectory looks like. It's pretty cool.
It's cool.
Well, I guess that's all the time we have today, so all right. Well, I wish you luck in the new year, Shelby.
Yeah, so I wish you luck as well.
Thank you. Let's get into this. We have a question.
Speaking of the new year, as we're heading into it, how do you get back into the swing of things after being gone for so long?
So it's relative, right? Long.
Not long.
For me, I generally take the last week, sometimes the last week and the first week off of the new year. This year I took about 10 days. I think it was 10 days off, including weekends.
Mm-hmm.
It's weird because like that period of time, it kind of starts at Thanksgiving, like prepping for that time off that we are going to have, that I'm going to have. And I'm really big into goals and really big into call them New Year's resolutions of sorts, right? Where to me, at midnight on January 1st is this really clean break, right? It's a clean set of data in a way. I think that's kind of how I look at it, where it's like, oh, like that data set just finished and now a new set begins.
Yep.
So for me, the last month, so like, again, going to like Thanksgiving to the new year, is really about wrapping up that data set and trying to figure out like, okay, like how did I do exactly compared to like kind of how I was projecting and just some of the goals that I had. So I'm like, I'm able to look at the goals that I had and now see like much more clearly, like, okay, how did we actually do to those things? Mm-hmm. So I don't know, like the last month again is really just wrapping everything up. And then once you learn from those things, it's trying to figure out how to move forward. So I try to get as much of this stuff prepped before this vacation as I can, which is like, so I use Notion, the team uses Notion. But there's a lot of little databases that have like those data sets in it. So there's things like the financial side of things. Mm-hmm. There's things like invoices, things like project leads. And just even within those categories, there's probably like 4 or 5 different things that I try to keep track of in there. Yeah. So for me, it's trying to get all of the 2024 stuff like ready to go, like get those clean databases ready to start inputting more data. I sound like a robot.
You do. I'm realizing. It's okay. I understand.
Because I don't know, like there's something really special about that last week or two of the year, mm-hmm. where expectations are generally low for the world as far as what actually gets accomplished.
Yep.
And I try to look at that a couple different ways. Like one where it's like, okay, cool, like we're all supposed to take a little bit of a break here, and even if we do work, we're not really expected to do much.
Yeah.
And I don't know, it's especially nice because if you do work at all during that time or do just try to get things organized, it's quiet. And I don't know, just probably one of my favorite activities to do that last week of the year is so remaking all these databases, getting them all in my little dashboard that I use. And I don't know, this sounds super weird, I guess. Yeah, it sounds so boring and uninteresting. But to me, it's like, I don't know, like today, our first day being back after the new year, I don't know, just something really special in the air whenever you just have everything kind of blank slate. And again, just even going back to like goals and stuff like that and resolutions where it's like, all right, like here are the things I'm going to try to be better at. And I'll get more into those resolutions here, I guess, in a little bit, but let me throw that back to you. What do you do to sort of get back into the swing of things?
I think about it actually very similar because it hit midnight on, December 31st, January 1st. And it's like, okay, I feel fresh. I feel like, which obviously like it doesn't really exist,
Right.
Time is a construct, but
230 million years.
Exactly.
Right? We're just
it's like
floating through this galaxy.
Yeah. In 1 year, it's so relative. It's an Earth year. I mean, it's whatever. But since we're here on Earth and we're doing our thing and we have short lifespans, we'll take it. I think the moment we hit that, it's like, okay, I feel like I can reset. I can take a look. I can reflect. And I think coming back in, especially, it's our first day back, it feels like this is a time where I was able to take that break. And obviously, things are slowing down and I'm able to reflect more and figure out exactly what I need going into the year. And it's that first day of implementation where it's like, this is it. We're here. We're going to start going. And there's a new hope. There's a new hope of it's Star Wars. It's a new hope of what can we move into going into this year and how exactly can we work within those goals that we've made? How do we implement them into the day-to-day grind? I've started doing a new thing because I think this is interesting. I think I was already doing it subconsciously, but I read a thing over the break where very successful people take the year in 3-month increments, where essentially they think of those 3 months as an entire year. And so as opposed to like, oh, it's Q1 or Q2 or whatever. It's like, that is the year. you have to do this much stuff within this year, and those are your resolutions, and then you set your next resolutions. So I am working within the 365-day span, but also creating the 3-month year, short year in air quotes, goals as well. And I'm going to see how that works out this year. I think it'll be something interesting to experiment with, but something new.
Yeah. I like that approach as well. I generally look at things. So like I have my year-long goals.
Mm-hmm.
And we kind of talked about last episode a bit. But I break everything down like on a month-to-month kind of thing.
Yeah.
Where I'm like, I guess my biggest yearly goal is always just to make progress. Like, I don't know. It's tough to put like quantifiable numbers on things sometimes. It just kind of feels like more of like a hope rather than a goal.
Yep.
But so like for me, I'm like, okay, well, if I wanted our company to do more revenue, well, all right. I mean, it's always a goal every year running a business, right? But it's not as simple as just saying like, okay, $10 million in revenue, right? You can't just say that. It doesn't really mean anything.
It's very relative because you also don't know what the year is going to be. So it's like, oh, if
Right.
market crashes, I mean, well, what are you going to do? You didn't make your goal, but that's not necessarily your fault or for lack of trying.
Right. So what I try to do is I try to break those things down into, like, okay, well, like I can't control the numbers necessarily, but what I can have a little bit more control over is maybe how many project requests we get.
Yeah.
And even that I'm still not fully in control of, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I can break it down at least a little bit more and say, okay, well, what am I going to do this month in effort to increase project requests?
Yep.
And so for me, I'm like, okay, so I have the big goal, but I try to break it down on a month-to-month basis where I'm like, okay, so like this month is like, okay, I want to hit X number of project requests this month. Now that number is more based on the last 3 years averages that I try to take into account. Like, okay, what's reasonable here? But for me, that's another big part of what I plan for. So I actually did this all just yesterday. I was a little late because we were traveling a bit, but is breaking it down, and I can see all 12 months and I know what my goals are for each one of those 12 months. Now those will change. Especially when we get to later in the year, some things may have been better, some things may have been worse. New goals may have sort of shown up. So I don't know. Like I try to put numbers as much as I can on the monthly goals, but not pretty much at all on the yearly goals. But yeah, I think that's just a really big part of kind of how I operate. So each month is almost like a new year to me.
Yeah.
I have like you said though, like I have started to think about quarters in a lot of different ways. That's always a tough one because every quarter for the motion design company, there are quarters that will always be better than others.
Yep.
So it's like, first quarter and the fourth quarter will always be different. Like you'll never have like the same goal going into all of those. But I don't know. There's just something really special though about taking that time of rest to kind of recalibrate. I think that's probably the best word that I can use there, because that's kind of what it feels like. Yeah. Where it's like you're kind of running this race all year long. And if you're anything like me anyway, I don't really look around when I'm running. I just run.
Go. Yep.
And I guess in a way it's like you're running with the lights off constantly. And then there are certain periods of time where you can turn the lights back on to see like, oh, I'm supposed to be going that way. But then you have to turn the lights back off again and run again.
Yep.
Does that make any sense at all?
No, I completely relate with that. Because it's like you just get, it's tunnel vision. You're like, right. I've got to go. And I've got to go right now, fast, quickly, and every once in a while be able to stop and think about exactly which way I'm running.
And I guess that's it, is you can have a lot of those points throughout the year where you recalibrate, but then you're not able to run as fast, I feel like. So like, I guess maybe that's the other thing, is you can run fast, but the lights are off. So there might be, like, every quarter I try to do a little bit of a check-in to turn the lights on for just a moment to see, like, all right, am I going in the right direction? Have I veered off course? Have you ever seen the Mythbusters episode where they tried to walk a straight line blindfolded? Like,
I don't think I have.
It was incredibly interesting, because you would think that you could just blindfold yourself and that you could go in a perfectly straight line.
Yeah.
And no. In most cases, they started doing circles. Like, they thought they were so confident that they were going straight, but they were actually just doing circles.
That's
like,
interesting.
The whole time. But
says
anyway,
a lot about the human condition.
It really does. And maybe how our inner ears work, potentially. I don't know. So, but it's very much like that. And that last week of the year is 100% the time where I leave the lights on the longest. Because I'm like, I'm not trying to run anywhere.
Yep.
Like, let's really try to map this whole thing out and see, I don't know, where we have to go from here. But it's also it's also a chance to turn the lights on and look back and see, like, oh, I see what I did.
Yep.
Like, either I did this really well, or I didn't do that good enough. And what do I need to change to be able to do that thing? You know, a lot of people have these big goals of, like, losing weight. And I say that because that's probably the most common one that we see.
Oh, yeah.
And in general, I think it's a good goal to have. It's not a bad goal. But what's bad is that people don't really have a real plan of doing it, usually. Like, yes, it is easy, and I believe people can mean it when they say that they want to do these things. And there are these points in time where people just have had enough, and they find a way to persevere through whatever and reach whatever goal that they have. But the big thing for me, again, is, yes, the goals are easy, but now let's develop some of those plans. And part of it, again, is a lot of those Notion databases that I make is really my plan. It's like, all right, here are the things that I think are going to work, and here's how I'm going to measure these things to see if they do or don't work. And, for anybody trying to lose weight out there, that's what I'll say is, like, if you start to keep track of the data, it's a lot easier to see the progress that you made, or the areas where you might be failing at things. And anyway, not the question that we're here to discuss, but I think it is related. I don't know.
I think it is. It's a very interesting thing, because I think we're told that we should be very reflective people. And I like to think that I'm a reflective person, but it's something that when you reflect so much, you can get stuck in your own head. And I think it's an important thing to sometimes run without the lights on. It's just knowing when to turn them back on. So for instance, if your goal is to lose weight, maybe it's something, my goal is to be healthy. And maybe that first part, that, Q1 is to lose weight. And maybe Q2 is, I'm going to start eating healthier. I'm going to add more vegetables. I'm going to do this. Q3 could be something very different. It's like maybe starting with that big goal of health, and then breaking it down into, this is weight, this is that, this is this. Because it's a much healthier way to break things into more bite-sized chunks.
Right.
As opposed to, here's my giant goal for this year that seems like an impossible task at the beginning of the year. Because it's not so looming then over you for, the first month, and then you forget about it afterwards because it was too big.
Right. So, like, one of the big goals that I have this year is to create an original piece of content with our team. And again, it's easy to say those things. But for me, it's, again, that quiet time of turning the lights on where it's like, all right, let's map this out. How does that happen exactly? And I don't have all the answers right away. I am 98% confident that we will find a time to do that this year. But I don't have like the exact things. Yeah. Not yet anyway. At a certain point I'll start to say like, okay, well, we do projects all the time. This is no different. Mm-hmm. So we need to start with writing. We need to start with storyboard. And that stuff will start to get put on the list for things that we're doing. And it's really that though. It's not just saying the big things, but actually understanding what the plan is.
Yeah.
So again, if I say that, hey, I hope that we do more revenue this year. Okay, well, how? That's all businesses across the entire world are saying the same thing on a yearly basis. But you can't just like wish for things to happen and then they happen. It doesn't work like that. You could get lucky, but that's not really a strategy. Yeah. That's just, it's luck. You hope for luck, but you can't plan on luck. Yeah. So I don't know. Again, so that's where for me, it just comes down to like, all right, well, what specifically are the activities that you're going to do to make that happen? Mm-hmm. But again, like, talking on a month-to-month or quarterly basis, it's okay. How did that work? Like trying to figure out anyway, or just having a plan right at the outset. Like, okay, for the next 6 months, I'm going to try 6 different techniques. And then let's see which one works the best.
Yep.
I don't know. Again, I talk about sales and I talk about things like that because it's probably what I'm most involved with on a day-to-day basis. But it works for everything. Just to, I don't know. Again, taking that period of time when it's quiet already and trying to work out what those plans are. So I guess that's why, like, coming back today, it's exciting because all the plans are in place.
In motion.
Yeah, and there's a new hope, right? As you say, Return of the Jedi.
Return of the Jedi. That's us.
We'll try to sneak in all the. We should do that one time.
We should
sneak in all the Star Wars names without laughing at all. Yeah. Is there anything else that you specifically do, Shelby?
Yeah. I think one of the things that I do is reevaluate my schedule and my scheduled time for things. I like to go through and it's like, okay, what was I doing on a day-to-day basis? And because I think that's something that's really helpful because we do make these giant goals. And, I think breaking it down to that day-to-day is really helpful of how can I set up my week and how can I set up my, day-to-day schedule? What does it look like hourly? What am I doing in the evenings? How am I spending this time? I'm a very routine-based person. So it's like setting up a healthy routine for the rest of the year and how I need to go through things. I think that's something that's very helpful because it does help you get through the day-to-day to help set up those goals.
That's a really good point because in general, when people take a week or two off of work, that's kind of the beauty of it is it breaks your routine and you're able to see much more clear, like, okay, maybe having 5 meetings a day wasn't the best idea.
Yeah.
But it's in the moment, it's tough to see those things.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I guess that's what I like about just that time off. And it's a chance that like, hey, you're about to start a new routine.
Yeah.
And this is going to be the easiest time for you to change that routine while it's all still kind of fresh.
That's the thing. It's like, this is the simplest time. If you're going to break an old unhealthy routine, this is the time to do it because you've had the opportunity to reset.
Yeah. And it's easy to see. It's harder to see in the moment what is actually an unhealthy routine. But at this time, I don't know.
For me, I'm going to try and get more sleep. I was like, it's fine in the moment running on 4 hours.
Not a good idea.
Man, that you can't sustain it.
Huh. What's the goal? What's the goal number of how many hours?
The goal, I think about 6. I think that's the goal. It's never going to be 8. I can't do 8. I'm too tired after 8. 6 is like a sweet spot for me.
Huh. I don't know. 8's where it's at. I could do anywhere between 6 and 8 and be fine. But if I start to get to like 5.5 for consecutive days, I'm not a happy camper.
That's usually my max is like 5.5. Usually it's
Yeah.
somewhere like 4.5, 5-ish. But
Nice.
yeah, we're going to do 6 this year. I'm really looking forward to it.
I like it. All right, let's get into some final thoughts here on this first recorded session of our new year. You go first, Shelby. I don't know where we're going here, but you go ahead.
Sounds good. I think my final thoughts on this of just like getting back in is just take that time. Obviously, this is going to come out next week, so hopefully you've already done this. But you know, as you're coming into it and as you've been able to have hopefully a little bit of a break, you know, this is the time to reset and take advantage of any time off that you had to be able to create new routines and then also set healthy goals for yourself for the year that are achievable, but you know, push yourself. Challenging.
I like it. I'll go back to something similar to what I was saying before, where I mean, from the very beginning, what we're talking about is science, right? I like to make things as scientific as I possibly can to make sense of things. So what I would say is, this is your chance for a clean data set right now. What are the pieces of data that you want to keep? You don't even necessarily have to like have a strategy just yet. But if you're saying like, hey, I want to get more sleep, it's starting a new data set today and saying, okay, how much sleep did I actually get? And when you start to have a data set that is as long as potentially a year, you get a lot of clarity from those things.
Yep.
And at that point, then it's really easy to, not really easy, but it's easier to come up with an actual strategy of what are you going to do now? Like, what do you want to happen to that number? Go up, down? You know, we talk to clients in this same way all the time, where it's like, all right, like, okay, here's your goal, but like, let me see your data. Like, why? Like, what exactly are you trying to change? Like, I understand your goals, but how do you know? How do you know when you've succeeded in anything? And yeah, it's something that we talk with our clients, and it's something that I firmly believe in internally, where, you know, I run, right? Every year I'm usually running a couple days a week. And I started running for the first time in 2007. And then in 2009, I was like, man, I wish I could like keep better track of how much I'm actually running. So I got the Nike shoes, had a little sensor at one point that you could put in your shoes. That's what I got. So I started keeping track that way. And it wasn't until then where I felt like I was really serious about running, because now I'm like, okay, it's keeping track and I can see the data. What's really fun is that I'm still reference that data all the time, where I'm like, you know, looking at how much I'm running this month compared to 10 years ago. I can look at the speed of which I was running. Like, just all that stuff is really meaningful for me to set bigger goals and to know exactly what I have to do as far as the strategy goes. So anyway, all that to say, if you don't have a clear goal, if you don't have a clear strategy in place, start with the data. Start with the data you think might be potentially meaningful to have, whether that's a month from now, or 3 months from now, or a year from now.
Yeah.
Because you'll be really surprised with what happens at that point, as far as like what you have the power to do. The other thing that I'll say is, you know, trying to have a hypothesis of some kind, right? What is going to happen if you do this? If you do X activity? So I don't know, like if I say like, hey, you know what? I want to be more active on LinkedIn because this is going to happen, which is going to cause this, which is going to cause that, which is going to cause this. Yep. If you can have those hypotheses, then I don't know. And that to me, that is a sort of strategy, right? It's here's what I believe is going to happen. You're going to be wrong a lot though. And that's totally fine to be wrong in these things, but taking the time to at least try to figure out what you think is going to happen and why do you think that's going to happen.
Yeah.
It's practicing strategies, practicing goals. And the more you practice, just like anything else, the better you get at those things. So that's all I'll say. All right. On that note, appreciate you all for listening. I think this is episode like 65 or so that we've ever done.
Somewhere in there, yeah. It's a lot.
Somewhere. It is a lot.
I know. The goal this year will make it to 100, hopefully.
You want to at least get to 100 this year, at least. I think that's a good goal to have. That is another thing that's probably good to kind of mention is like, we don't have like a really specific goal in doing this podcast necessarily. Mm-hmm. What we know is that this is fun to do, and I hope that other people enjoy it as well. Yeah. If you have any good big questions for us, like definitely send it over to us through the website CMD-Z.show. And anything else you want to add, Shelby?
I'm hoping you can't hear my Slack notifications. I'm sure you can. They're loud.
I didn't hear them.
Oh, good. Oh, cool. Okay.
Nice.
Nice. But no, yeah. Please send us requests, questions. We'd love to hear them. And if you think maybe you might be really good on the show, reach out. We got something big to talk about.
Yep. All right. That's all. Love you. Bye.
The CMD-Z Show is created by Made by Things. And if you have a question you would like us to discuss, you can send a message at CMD-Z.show. And if you like what you hear, leave a review. We'll see you next week with a brand new show.